that singing river, that one that we heard about. And thank you, choir, for that. And that's beautiful. And I'm not sure how that segues into what I want to say this morning, but I was particularly thinking of Carl this morning when I said I need to breathe in and breathe out. But I was also thinking of Carl for another reason. He had ventured out on that mission to raise money to help the Cancer Society, and he did that by riding his bike, and taking the things that are important and working it through into an act of service is awesome. Yesterday, in case you missed it, it was the Valley Grand Fondo, 160-kilometer bike ride. Starts in Fort Langley and ends up in Fort Langley. And you can visualize it wandering through the beautiful landscape of the Fraser Valley until you get to my road. Old Jail Road and Majuba Hill. And I kind of like to be there, to watch the bikers go by, because I have an interest in that. My son-in-law is a biker, and my grandchildren are bikers, and they've entered their first triathlon, and that's cool. So I like to watch the bikers go by, and I figured out they left Fort Langley at 7 o'clock in the morning. I figured by 8:30 they would be going by my driveway, and I was down there just to see the parade go by. And I waited a few minutes, and then along came the marshal car that kind of drives ahead to check out the way. And then I looked down the road, and I could see him coming. And he was coming up Old Jail to enter into Majuba Hill, and he was coming. And as he went by, I shared my greeting with him. He looked really determined. He just looked at me and said, "What's my time?" What's my time? What's my time? About 35, maybe 45 seconds later, the great gathering came. The first wave of bikers pedaling together. And it was different. They were working hard getting up that hill, but they were chatting with each other, they were laughing, they were looking around at, "Oh, this is great. Oh yeah, that's a big hill." But they were enthusiastic, they were enjoying each other, and they were enjoying the day. I'm not passing judgment on anyone, but I was kind of wondering, what was the difference between that first biker and that second gathering that came along? They had both worked hard to train. They both saw a goal, but their approach was different. I wonder. The text this morning. Oh, the text of Mary and Martha. I don't know how many Bible study groups I have been in where we've shared this text, and when people are talking about Mary and Martha, and inevitably, when the discussion is over, Martha wins. Did you know that? Because people kind of Martha's worked hard. She's worked really hard. And I have to tell you, part of me says, yeah, I can root for Martha too, because I grew up in a home with Martha. I have to tell you that whenever anyone came to our house, my mom spent all of her time in the kitchen making sure that everything was perfect. And I can see some heads nodding. Getting things just right. To extend hospitality was really important. And so part of me kind of hears this story, and I'm thinking of Martha. And I know it's part of my growing up. However, I think we need to look at this story in kind of a unique way. We know Mary and Martha. Jesus knew them. I don't know why Luke didn't tell us the name of the town, because everybody knew that it was outside of Jerusalem, and Jesus had often visited his friends Mary and Martha, and although their brother isn't mentioned in this text, Lazarus. And we know that Jesus loved them dearly. Loved them as his friends. He knew them closely. One way of hearing this story from Luke is to see Martha and Mary as perhaps symbols of the two faces of our Christian discipleship. One is a woman of action, preparing that meal, making sure everything is perfect, to show hospitality, to welcome people into her house. Especially Jesus coming with his disciples and others. She must have been very busy. And then the other we see as Mary, the woman of contemplation, the woman who saw it important to hear what Jesus had to say. The text says she sat at the feet of Jesus. That means she took the role of a disciple who is learning. The fact that in Jesus' time, not many women would sit at the feet of a teacher is significant. She was a learner, and she chose to hear the teachings of Jesus. It's Martha, Luke says, who initially invites Jesus into their home, because he's on his way to Jerusalem, and he's dependent upon people like Martha to give him and his companions shelter and food. And we can see her in our minds at that steady work, doing the work of preparing a place for Jesus and his disciples and followers. Then we hear in the story that after a while, this is a big job. And where's my sister? Why isn't she helping me with the task at hand? And we read that bit of an edge in the story. I don't know whether you heard it or not, but she's getting angry that her sister isn't helping her to do this work. And she says to Jesus, can't you tell my sister to come and help me? There's all this work to be done. Can't you get her to help me? But Jesus answered her, and we have to hear it clearly, because he loved her. He said, "You're Martha. Martha, you're worried about so many things. You're distracted by many things. But there's only need for one thing. There's only need for one thing. And your sister is experiencing that one thing. And we won't take that away from her. And so we have this story of two people that represent so much of us. That some of us are busy in the discipleship of service, working hard, doing the things that we're called to do. And some of us are spending time in reflection and contemplation. I know that some of you are followers of the writings of Richard Rohr, the author of so many books like The Naked Now. And Richard Rohr is a Franciscan priest. He leads a group of folk at the Center for Action and Contemplation in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he's retired. But just the name of that center is something to contemplate. The name of the center is Action and Contemplation. Action and contemplation have not always known what to do with each other. People of action, they're the doers. They're the folk who are practical in their minds. They see the task ahead of them. They know what they need to do, and they get things done. Or at least in the case of many folk, we know that they try to get things done. Giving their time, giving their talents, sharing their skills, giving up their energy to get things done, making a better world. Spirituality of action. Action that calls us to pray with our feet, to pray with our hands, to get out into the world. I often think of gatherings I had been in the early days of my life in the church, where we would be talking about what our action, what our mission is, and what we need to do. And then all of a sudden, because it's a group of United Church folk, somebody would say, "Does anyone have a Bible?" And suddenly we were looking around. Where's the Bible? Where's the text? We were people of action. But I think we have come a long way. We're now folk who see the importance of contemplation, of the inward journey, of focusing on who we are and what God calls us to do. We become a folk that need that time of inward reflection. That balance, that balance we need to have of our work and our reflection. That balance is so important to us. It's something that we need to continually work at. Richard Rohr's center is called the Center for Action and Contemplation. Action, contemplation. But the important word in that title is the and. The and. Action and contemplation. Our life together in community here calls us to both of those. And I celebrate the action that you've fulfilled in this community and the area around us. And I also celebrate your spirit of contemplation and reflection. Keeping those two things in balance. We cannot be a folk who are distracted. We need to focus on the one who calls us. Be focused on the one who calls us into ministry together. There was another writer, Ronald Rolheiser, the Holy Longing, who had suggested something different about this story. He said that perhaps Mary and Martha can represent different stages of life. Those who find themselves in the middle portion of life, giving themselves to a career, raising a family, creating a home, are more heavily identified with Martha. Those who are working hard. And then there's the group he calls the empty nesters. I wonder what that's going to be like. Because from what I hear, once you retire, your schedule completely opens up and you have all the time in the world. And I think what Rolheiser means is that there is more discretionary time to pursue contemplation. And I think we need to know that we have this balance of folk in our midst, but we do need that time for reflection and contemplation. There was another point about sibling rivalry, but my alarm has gone off. So that will wait for another day. What I want you to celebrate today is the fact that the Holy One is always with you, and that the one that you follow, is always with you. And that one calls you into faithful discipleship, where you are called to do the work that needs to be done and reflect on what he says he tells you to do. We don't really retire from our work in the church. We continue to explore new ways of being faithful to that one who calls us. Thanks be to God. Let's sing. Put peace into each other's hands.